Hey, what's up? It's Codius. Here's an in-depth tutorial for how I make my thumbnails since user Widiane3579 was curious as to how I make them. I'll show where I take screenshots of the tune for my thumbnails, where I get my backgrounds, etc., as well as, obviously, how I edit them together to create my thumbnails. I personally use Krita, a free editing and drawing software on PC, but this can easily be replicated on other editors, such as Ibis Paint X. If you struggle keeping up with this due to the app one use, I can always remake this with Ibis Paint X, since I know a lot of people use that. Now, where do I get /take screenshots of the tunes? Personally, I firstly go into roleplay mode since I like the hurt expressions more than the blank stare all the tunes give you. Then we need to find a plain surface to put our tune against so it's easier to erase the background. I always use this purple wall right here as the background for my screenshots. So let's just line Cosmo up, change his expression, and take a screenshot of him. Since I'm making a thumbnail for a video I'm currently editing where I played as Cosmo. Next, where do I get my backgrounds? One way to easily get backgrounds is to simply go into roleplay mode and take pictures yourself. But personally, I like to just search up Dandy's world map and it'll bring up photos of Dandy's world maps. So I just take one of those and save them. If I see one I like and there's a tune in the screenshot, I just cover it up with the tune I'm using for the thumbnail, editing them over the tune in the original screenshot. Okay, so I see one I like, so I'm just going to save it and then we can start with the editing. So now we're in my editing software. Make sure you set your canvas to the YouTube thumbnail size of 1280 by 720. After you make a new canvas, you're going to want to add your background first. The same one that we got from Safari, or the one you took in roleplay mode. We want to add that, and then make sure it's up to size with our canvas. Afterwards, I create a new layer and cover the entire thing with white, changing the new layer's filter to overlay. It's not necessarily needed, but it does make the background brighter. Next, I make another layer and color it with black and white before using the airbrush tool to blend them more. I'm going to do the same thing and change the layer to overlay and then turn down the opacity so it's not as intense. That's all I do to the background before I move into work on editing the tune. So first, we drop the screenshot we took of our tune, and the first thing I do is remove the background before I size them up. Using the selection tool, I select the purple background and remove all of it, as well as the excess of brown at the bottom that was left since I didn't quite crop my screenshot as well. But this process could be sped up using a background remover before you insert the picture in. Next thing I do is size him up to the size I want, making sure he fills the canvas out and is the main viewpoint, but isn't taking up too much of the canvas. Since later, I do want to add twisteds in the back behind him. Though I will admit, right here I do make him a bit big and go back later to fix it. Next I want to add an outline around him. In Krita, I select him and grow the size of the selection by 4 by choosing Grow Selection in the Select tab. In Ibis Paint X, you'll go to Filter, Style, and choose Stroke, Outer, and choose the size of the outline. With Krita, I have to make a new layer under him and use a fat brush to color the selected area to create the background. Afterwards, I go to add this glow behind the character. I do this to put more of the attention on the character, making sure he's the main viewpoint of the thumbnail. I usually grab a color similar to the character, orange since Cosmo's wearing orange. Using the airbrush tool, I just airbrush the color around the character. Afterwards, I change the filter of the layer to add or addition in order to brighten it up, lowering the opacity a bit afterwards so it's not too intense. I want to add twisteds in the background behind Cosmo. Since I got Twisted Sprout and Twisted Dandy, I'll be adding them. It's hard to get a screenshot of them that's easy to erase the background of, so I search up Twisted Sprout PNG. Make sure you type in PNG, since PNG means it has a transparent background. Not all of them are actually transparent, like the one I save with a white background, but a single colored background is easy to get rid of. I search up Twisted Dandy PNG next to find one of them as well. And why'd I click that? Okay, so I just insert the images I just saved, size the Sprout one down, so I can remove the background and start to size them up how I want behind Cosmo. Here's also where I realized Cosmo was a bit too big. So I size him and his orange glow down a bit before continuing with placing Sprout and Dandy where I want. Then it's pretty much just a repeat, add an outline around them too. though I usually use a slightly thinner one for the things behind and around the main viewpoint. Now I want Cosmo to stand out more, since it can seem kind of muddy, and the eye might not know where to look if there's not a distinction between what's the viewpoint and what's not. So I select the characters again and create a new layer. I start off putting blue over them, but cool and warm tones don't really look the best together here. So eventually I change the color to orange. But you change that layer to overlay and lower the opacity, so it's not so intense, and bam, Cosmo stands out more. But he could stand out even more. I grab a darker color and use the airbrush tool, lightly airbrushing only the parts that are near Cosmo and right behind him. This causes him to pop more from them. Then I lower the opacity again. Now the text. It's way easier in IBIS Paint X, so just do as you can, add your title / words, and make sure they're in a bolder, thicker font. The bold font and the deep red I use helps draw the eye, since the rest of the thumbnail isn't like that. Also, the thumbnail and title you actually use for your videos don't have to match exactly, by the way. I usually make my thumbnail words different from my actual titles. Then I just size it up, making sure it's big enough to read when you see the thumbnail on YouTube. Also making sure it's always near the top away from the tunes, so things don't get confusing for the viewer. Afterwards, I just slap on a white outline. And here's the finished one. You can see I changed the blue to orange, so the entire thing had a warmer color theme. Hope this helped. Hope I described everything okay for mobile and Krita users. If you have questions, just comment them and I'll try and help you out. Thanks for watching till the end, and thanks for asking about it.